Hello and welcome. I'm Liz Booker, literary aviatrix, and today I am in a medieval hilltop village in southern France visiting retired airline pilot, author, and my very good friend, Patty Bear. Patty and I met in 2021 when I interviewed her for the launch of her memoir, From Plane to Plane, My Mennonite Childhood, A National Scandal, and an Unconventional Sort of Freedom. And since she spends part of her year in South Florida near where I live, over the past few years, we've become very good friends. Well, I'm visiting her at her new home in Provence, and she has a book coming out on September 9th. And so we decided to do a little impromptu interview to celebrate the launch of the new book. Fewer than 10% of pilots and aircraft mechanics are women. These are their stories of tenacity, adventure, and courage. Stories with the power to inspire, heal, and connect. Welcome to the Literary Aviatrix community, where we leverage the power of story to build and celebrate our community and inspire the next generation of aviation. Ms. Patty Bear, thank you so much for welcoming me into your beautiful home in southern France. How are you doing?
Good. It's a pleasure. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, Liz.
I know. I'm so excited. And you snuck a new book out on me. We have a new book coming out on September 9th. Can you give us a synopsis?
Well, this book is kind of, I call it my oopsie baby, because I was writing another book, and then just for fun, I wanted to stop and work on some of these things that I had been working on for like 20 years. I collected these little wisdom hacks, these distilled bits of wisdom that I've used in my life and have passed on to other people too. And so the book is about these wisdom hacks that have been distilled from years of flying and leadership and gardening and parenting and coaching.
And I'm so excited to talk about some of them. You know, obviously, anybody who listens to my podcast or follows me knows that I'm about promoting women in aviation, and that is how we met. But an ancillary benefit from this project has been the opportunity to spend time with women who are a little further along on their timeline in lives than I am, to put it nicely.
You mean old?
A little older, just a little older than I am, but also more advanced on, you have ushered your children into the world as adults, and I still have, a teenager at home for a few more years. So, not just age, but also stage of life. And I can honestly confess that, in my 20s, in my 30s, and even in my early 40s, because I had just had a child, I wasn't necessarily dreaming or envisioning what my life post-retirement would look like.
Nor was I.
And nor were you. However, in your book, you have some very good advice that sets you up to have lots of opportunities and possibilities later in life that you might not have if you don't make those good choices early on. And so I want to do a couple of things in this conversation. First, I want to bridge the gap, because if people have read your memoir, which is From Plane to Plane, and you've always got you and your subtitles, From Plane to Plane, My Mennonite Childhood, A National Scandal, and an Unconventional Sort of Freedom, which is a wonderful book, but it kind of closes out as you start your aviation career. So I want to bridge the gap for people from that moment that we can read about in your memoir to how you got here, and use that hopefully as a guide or a mentor example for younger women who are hoping to have families and aviation careers. And then I want to talk about how you implementing these hacks, these bits of wisdom that you're giving us, how you implementing those led to this beautiful space. So I just want to orient, my listeners and viewers on where this conversation is going to go, because it's a little unconventional for kind of the way I do my interviews typically. But we're good friends, and I think we can navigate this together. So let's start with what happens, with Patty and her family from the time that, you went to the Air Force Academy. Just briefly give us that summary and bridge that for us.
Sure. So what you're talking about, the memoir, it leaves off when I'm leaving high school for the academy. Because if I'd written the whole story, it would have been, 1,000 pages. So I stopped there with the intention of maybe writing some other time the rest of the story. But after that, I went to the Air Force Academy and I graduated. And then I went to pilot training. And then I flew KC-135s. And I was stationed in northern Maine, the tip top of northern Maine, back when Strategic Air Command was a thing. And then Griffiths Air Force Base, and I flew in Desert Storm and Desert Shield, and then came back and got out of the military. And then airlines weren't hiring a whole lot. It took about a year to get hired, and I got hired on with United. I was very fortunate. And I spent almost 30 years at United. I was a flight engineer on the DC-10. And then I flew the 737 and then the 757, 767 in the right seat. And then I transitioned to the left seat in the 757, 767. And due to downturn in the industry, then I got bumped off the left seat and I went to the right seat of the 777.
Was that in post 9/11?
It was post 9/11, and it was I forget anymore what the economic circumstances were.
So like the late 2000s.
So I got bumped up in 2009.
Yeah.
And then so it was after the 2008, the financial crisis.
Mm-hmm.
So I went back to the right seat because I love flying international. So I could have gone to the left seat of the Airbus or to the right seat and flew international. And that's where my heart was flying international. So I did that until I could get an upgrade back to the 757, 767 fleet. And then I upgraded to the 777 about a year before I retired.
So that's you, but there's a whole lot of background in there too. Somewhere along the way, you met the love of your life and got married and had children. So how did that all fit in for you?
So my husband I met in northern Maine. And
he was in the Air Force as well?
He was in the Air Force as well. Mm-hmm. He flew KC-135s. And then we both got transfers to Griffiths Air Force Base, so that worked out well. And then he stayed in a little longer than I did, and then we had our daughter. So I was at United, and we didn't have trip training then. If you're not in the industry, you don't know what that means. How big a deal that is. But we didn't have trip trading, and I think very few other companies had trip trading as well. But what it made possible was after we got it, it made possible for my husband then to go to an airline job, because what he did was he got an interview with United and it was all set up, and we couldn't, before we had trip trading, we could not figure out how we could both of us fly airline jobs with a child. So He stayed home and he got hired at a guard unit because it was flexible. And then once we got trip trading, then we were like, hey, this might be possible. And one of my friends was doing it. She and her husband were both flying for United by then, and they had kids. And I was like, oh, this would be possible. So trip trading made that possible. And the airlines now are much more, there's a lot more flexibility. I can't speak for all of them because I don't know what the policies are in place at all the different airlines. But that made a world of difference.
You still had a little help too, I understand. You got people who had sort of flexible schedules who could do overnight care for your kids and that kind of thing.
Yeah. So what we did is we could have gotten a nanny, but because it was, you could only get them for like a 1 year at a time, or that was my understanding anyway. So I had this idea. I was like, we don't need somebody here every day, and we didn't want somebody there while we were at the house.
Yeah, so like an au pair living in wouldn't work. We considered that too, and it was just not for us.
Yeah. So I thought, I was like, so there are people who would like, there must be people who don't want a full-time job and would like part-time job or part-time work,
mm-hmm.
and could stay overnight.
Yeah.
And so we were able to find people like that, obviously interviewed them and did checks on them and everything, but they slept in our house while we were gone, so our kids never had to leave. Mm-hmm. And my son fired one of them.
Oh, it's always nice when the kids weigh in. I had some of that as well.
So we had this. Oh, she was just wonderful. She was an older woman, and she was just perfect. But one day my son, he was in kindergarten, he got mad at her and he said, "You're fired."
Oh.
She just laughed. And another time she went to pick him up at the kindergarten drop off because it wasn't in front of our house, and she drove our van and she got stuck in the field while she was waiting for the bus. And he says from the back, he says, "Oh, my mommy will not be happy."
Oh, I see. So he was like the manager.
Oh, he was funny. So yeah, so we did that for a number of years, and then when the kids got older, we just didn't need it very much. So my mom did part-time, and when they were teenagers, I guess, and we didn't leave them home alone until my daughter was probably almost 18 and then my son was 16, because it's a bit much if you're out of the country to leave your kids alone, even though they could take care of themselves. So yeah, that's what we did. And then yeah.
And so you took, during COVID, they offered an early retirement. And so you took that? Yeah.
Yeah. So when COVID came along, it looked like there was going to be another big downturn in the industry. And having already gone through that 10-year downturn after 9/11, I had never planned on retiring early. I hadn't really thought of it. By that time, it's just kind of an easy street. And my husband had always intended to retire early so he could walk the Appalachian Trail. I never really thought about it. But when it came along, and I've kind of always lived my life this way, that something comes up and it feels right, even though it's completely unexpected. And it's like, it just felt like, yeah, it was the time. And it was hard to, it's a very final decision, because once that bid goes through, you're done.
You're done. Yeah.
Yeah. Your line number is done. And, it took me at least a good 3 years to adjust psychologically to retirement. It's not that I didn't have things to do. It changes your identity, and it happened so quickly that it was just a bit much to get used to. But now I love it.
Yeah, I love it. So before we move on into this book, I just wanted to touch on a couple of other things. So first of all, speaking of children, the first book that you wrote was a guide for parents, and I've read it. I could have used it, maybe 20 years ago when my children were young, but I still can employ it. Can you give us just a little taste of what that book is about?
Yeah, so that again was one of those things that I call them synchronicities or nudges or whatever, but it wouldn't let me go. There was this preschool teacher who was just incredible with young children, just wonderful. And I had always sort of had in the back of my mind, somebody should write a book about what she does. And as she was retiring, their preschool she ran was closing down. My sister said to me, somebody should write a book about what she does. And I said, yeah, somebody should, thinking, yeah, they should. And then it wouldn't let me go for 3 weeks. I was like, okay, I get those ideas. I'm like, come on. No, yes, right now. I was like, I had another book. I wanted to write my memoir, but that wasn't time. So I wrote about, she did what she did was so natural and so intuitive that it took me, I wrote literally 600 pages trying to distill what she did and how she did it. And I came down to warmth and order. And my intent was to hand a tool to parents that they could use in their own voice and from their own wisdom, and they could use in the heat of the moment. Because with kids, it's the heat of the moment. That's when you need, and then you're trying to think, well, what was that advice? What did they say to do in this moment? And so there's more to the explanation in the book than that, but that was what it was, is if you can remember, you need warmth and order. What do you need right now? What does this child need right now? Because that's what they need, you know.
What's the name of the book?
It's called House of the Sun, A Visionary Guide for Parenting in a Complex World.
I highly recommend it for parents. So,
and even if you don't have young children, I wrote it when my daughter was 17, and I found like some of the things that we would have disagreements about or we didn't see eye to eye about. It made me think about I just use those same things that the teacher taught, and we got to start to get along
Yep.
much better. So I may have to go back and reread it myself just because it's
Yeah.
a good program.
Yeah, as I have like I said, a teenager. He just turned 13, and we're entering into my third round of this fun experience. I do feel like all of my children have been parented by different parents because we've been at different phases since I had them 10 years apart. But it's time to review it as well,
Yeah.
to kind of get ready for this phase and do that in a more mature and informed way than maybe I navigated the other two. So I'm excited about that. You also had a little side gig of life coaching. So talk a little bit about that. Patty's Flying Club, was it?
Well, so the flying club still exists, and it has to do with this idea of tapping into your own wisdom and also tapping into some universal principles,
Mhm.
and using that. So it wasn't just the personal coaching, but I have always liked, I think I see potential in people. Like I see what they can be, and it gets me really excited. And if it's something they want to do, then it's how can you see the angles, or how can you help them be that? So personal coaching for me was about helping them do what they wanted to do in their life. And
Mhm.
so yeah.
Yeah, and so you call back to that in the book a little bit.
Hmm.
So a couple of years ago, I think it was March of 2024, we were sitting on the couch of an Airbnb in Orlando, where a whole bunch of the authors who were participating in Women in Aviation's Authors Connect were staying in this giant house. And we had some downtime sitting on the couch, and you had your iPad out, and I was like, "What are you doing?" She's like, you're like, "Oh, I'm just looking at houses in France." And I was like, "Why are you looking at houses in France? Because I know you to have two comfortable homes already." So I was like, "What's happening?" And you said, "Well, dreaming is free." And then, 6, 7 months later, we're sitting on the beach in Fort Lauderdale, and you're like, "I'm buying a house in Provence." So talk about that journey and how you came to this incredible place here in France.
Well, I literally do. Like, I just heard myself saying that to you. It's not something that I'd thought about for a long time, but it's like one of those things, and I'm sure you do this too. Like, you hear yourself saying something and it has a ring of truth, and you're like, wait, that actually is true. Right.
Right?
And so, um, my husband and we got up every morning with coffee because it was fun. Like, we'd always sort of had this idea of living overseas and immersing ourselves in some other culture. And at one point, we had thought about selling our house because at that time we lived in Pennsylvania, and our kids were leaving. They were leaving home and they were going elsewhere, and it was just time. It was just time to sell the family home there. And so we'd had this idea we would put all of our furniture in storage, and then we would start with the blank slate, and we would think about where to go. So I was doing a lot of trips to flying into Lisbon, and when we would climb out, the departure, I'd be looking out and going, oh, what neighborhood, where would be a good place to live here? But, it didn't work out. So then we came here on a family vacation, and we were like, well, that might be kind of fun. So then looking at, every morning we would have coffee and we would look at these websites that featured properties, and, some were more wildly out of our price range, and, others looked like they'd be perfect. And so the one I showed you, it just looks so charming on paper. And so we came over to see that, and a couple more, and it turned out to be a kind of an awkward, it turned out to be kind of an awkward bedroom bathroom thing. It just wasn't going to work in enough outdoor space. So we were a little disappointed, but we were like, oh, we tried. So that's always been kind of my philosophy: is it doesn't hurt to dream.
Mhm.
And a lot of the things that you dream, and a lot of the things that you're like, oh, that'd be fun, they're never going to happen.
Mhm.
And a lot of them aren't supposed to happen.
Mhm.
And, but if you can kind of keep that open mind and just have fun doing it,
Mhm.
then, it leads to things. And so we kept looking, we were still goofing around, um, and my husband would always get upset at me because I'd always be looking at things way out of our price range. And I knew they weren't doable, but I wanted to see those kind of houses because they were kind of fun.
Yeah.
But, eventually, we found this house that Didn't didn't look like a whole lot whenever we first looked at it, but there was something about it. So it's an old, olive mill, and that sort of caught my attention. I was like, "Well, that's odd. That's different. So let's go see some new." So here, that's why we're here.
So, yeah, absolutely. And here, for anybody listening but not watching the video, here's probably where I'll start inserting some videos from the trip. So, just to back it up, now you're a good friend of mine. I would have come over here one way or another. However, the way this trip was structured to come see you was sort of in gratitude for another host. So a few years ago, I was going to go to Barbados to meet Mary S. Lovell. Mary S. Lovell, who I interviewed, who had written a biography of Beryl Markham. And we were chatting on my interview with her, and she said, "Oh, I winter in Barbados." And I said, "Oh, I used to live in Barbados. Would you like to have dinner with the US ambassador?" And it turned into this whole thing. Who would I like to be sitting around that table with us? And so I invited you and Kevin,
Yeah.
and we all went to Barbados and stayed at the US ambassador's gorgeous house there.
Which is a once in a lifetime opportunity.
Yeah, it was a wonderful experience.
And met her, which
And
she's
she's
amazing.
absolutely
She is
lovely.
amazing.
My best boss ever and a good friend of mine. And so as a thank you, you invited us to come over and stay with you. And I just get to benefit from all that.
As did I.
Which is so fun. So we've been here for a few days. You've taken us around in this house. I mean, I knew you bought a place in Provence. I didn't know much else about it. I saw maybe some, little projects with you redoing the floors or something here and there, but I had no concept of where it was. The views, you certainly kept that, on the DL. But also like the layout of the house. I would call this a villa more than, a house. It has just all of these different levels. So describe the house for us and then tell us about the area that you live in.
So, well, maybe what I'll do is I'll start with the area because, so you read the books. I think there was a year in Provence and I can't remember the author's name, Peter something. It made it famous. And you come here, and there is something magical about this area. Well, I go out for walks, these little narrow country roads through the woods, and you stare out, and so on these roads, the view you're looking out over fields of vineyards, olive groves. There's a lot of orchards around here. And then you're looking out on Mont Ventoux, which is where they do a stage of the Tour de France every year. But there's something about, I can't even kind of put it into words. There's something about the air and the atmosphere. It's soft and it's graceful, and they live differently here. So I feel like, so we've been here for what, 5 months maybe now this year. And I feel like I'm slowly beginning to slow down into this pace, and it's a learning experience. And anybody who knows me knows slowing down isn't really my sweet spot. It's not what I do well. But it is kind of a lovely feeling. And so we live in a medieval village, and I think it's from 800 years old. So some of the stone homes are occupied, some of them are not.
I'm just going to correct you there. I think the dates that I saw on the castle at the top of the hill was in the 800s is when it was beginning to be built. Yeah,
I think you're right.
Yeah,
I think you're right.
So older than 800 years.
Yeah. So yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, my math is off with that. So a very old village, and we have a lot of part-time neighbors here, and the people here are lovely, just absolutely lovely. They have been kind to us, even when we don't speak very good French, which is we don't yet. We're still learning, but so that's kind of the atmosphere. This house, like I said, was originally an old oil mill for the village, is what the previous owner said. And they had been here about 30 years. And so when we bought it, it was, I like light spaces. I like some contrast. But I like light. I always have. And so we lightened up some things. We painted. It had a Austrian feel. It had like the Bavarian feel because the previous owner was originally from
Mhm.
Austria,
Okay.
and it may have been that way originally. But so we lightened up a lot, painted a lot of things. I painted floors, and um, I I really enjoy transformation, as do you.
So so the village itself is at the top of a hill, and your terrace looks out at Mont Ventoux, which you took us to yesterday. We got
Yeah.
to go up and see the cyclists who ride up there, but like you said, it's part of the Tour de France. You're in the south of France, in Provence, so it's not the season right now, but obviously you have the access to all the beautiful lavender fields here.
Mm.
Yeah, and so it's just an absolutely scrumptious, gorgeous, lovely view from your house, and a beautiful house with all these interesting spaces, terraces all throughout. And I'm just so happy for you that you have built this dream. And this is a
Same.
and this is a part-time thing that you guys are doing. And we kind of talked about that. Like you still have your places in the United States and your family there, and this is sort of a temporary thing for you. So kind of talk about how you envision that fitting into the stage of your life.
Yeah, so this is a great place to be in the summertime. We were over here in the winter a little bit, and it was uh kind of a soaking cold.
Yeah.
So we our plan is to be here in the summertime and then to go back to the States for the wintertime. So split our time about half and half. We never thought of this as a long term like we're not moving here permanently for the rest of our life or anything.
Yeah.
Because I think with healthcare and that, as you get older, that might become a little awkward. But so I don't know,
It's just
3 years, 10 years, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
and
really-
it's just sort of get out of your comfort zone. And it is out of your comfort zone. Like
Yeah.
I remember after we signed the paper here, I had a number of sleepless nights. I was like, what have we done? Is this crazy? What have we done?
You're not losing
So,
sleep. You're not growing, right?
there is a sweet spot.
Mhm.
You don't want to gamble. You don't want to do, stupid things you haven't thought through and you haven't really gained out the long-term consequences. But nothing worthwhile doing isn't going to cause that intake of breath where you're like, because, because at the very least, you're dealing with an entirely different culture, an entirely different language.
Mhm.
And that in itself was a little unnerving.
Well, this is a perfect segue. So let's tie it all back to the book. So talk about the book, some of the life hacks there, and I'm just going to pick the book up and just kind of describe what it is. You've got it structured into there are just a few pages. Each hack, there are 20 hacks in here, wisdom hacks. Um, you've got them each structured with the name of the hack and the number. You give us a story behind the hack.
Mhm.
You talk about how to use it. There's an inner math around it. There's a vibe to look for, which I
Mhm.
really like. And then sometimes there's like a little wrap up at the end to just kind of put a little bow on it. So talk about and now we're thinking about our young women, who are still in the grind or who are just, all they want to do is, get the hours that they need to apply to the airlines. They're certainly not thinking about retirement at this point, but they might buy the book and just talk about the things in here that lead to the possibility of fulfilling a dream like this.
So I'll start with the 20th hack, which was actually the first one chronologically, I think, that I really registered. So I had grown up, I talk about in my memoir growing up, a lot of hardship, but we also learn uh, hardship in terms of not a lot of money and that being a kind of ever present thing. But we were taught to save. But I had this instructor at the academy who was a colonel, and this is back in the military. Really didn't make much money. The salaries have progressed since then. But what struck me is he was a millionaire on a rather modest military salary at the time, and he was very generous. So we had it was one of the few classes there that was fairly large, and from time to time, several times, at least in a semester, he would buy the entire class, or maybe 60 or 90 students, can't remember, ice cream at there's a little cadet store there in the, uh, the building. And so that really struck me, right? He was generous with what he had earned and saved. And then he told us, and this sort of like, how you hear those things and you're like, oh, there's some ring of truth or integrity or something. You're like, oh, there's something there. Like you can feel the substance. And he said, pay yourself first. And I was like, huh, what? I was like, what? Huh? And he explained, he said, first of all, he said, when you graduate, don't go and buy the fancy cadet car, which is a tradition. I think it was kind of like I think it was kind of modeled after like the astronauts who all bought Corvettes.
Right.
Kind of tradition. He said, don't do that. He said, buy yourself a used car. Um, don't start out that way. He said, once you get promoted, he said, you're already living on second lieutenant's pay. Once you get promoted, he said, you already know how to live on that amount of money. He said, bank the difference.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, that kind of makes sense. And then he said, pay yourself first. And he said, when you make a budget, he said, take out what you want to save first. Put that in your budget instead of waiting till the end of the month and seeing what's left.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can relax,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can, you've got that taken care of. Now you can spend the rest of the money that's available.
Mm-hmm.
And so it did take me a couple of years. I didn't get into a clothes buying spree after graduation, but eventually, uh, that always stuck in my mind. And so I did that. And I, first of all, like the peace of mind, because I'm like, I've already taken care of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but over time, it's just, it's a habit that compounds because you've saved and you've taken care of your future. And so it's one I've taught to a lot of other people.
It's not just that the habit compounds, the money does too.
Well, that's true.
That's
exactly
the amount
right.
of time if you're able to get started that early. Yeah.
That's exactly right. And I talk about in the book how it doesn't just apply to money, it applies to other things.
Absolutely. I mean, the way I think about it right now is paying myself first, is making sure that I get my exercise in.
Yes.
Because obviously, like if I want to enjoy some longevity and have my quality of life be what I'm hoping it will be, so that however long I'm still around, the first thing I have to do is take care of the body, and that's what paying myself first looks like for me right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what else? There's so many in here. What else would you say applies for the hacks that got you to this beautiful little?
So, like it or love it is one, and that applies, and we can talk about that. I'll start with where it started from, though, was my daughter and I. She loves clothes too, and always has. She would sometimes wear 3 dresses as a child at the same time, and it was so cute, and so unique.
Yeah.
But we go into the stores, and she loved everything. She wanted everything, and I had a budget. And so we would get into a little tussle about this. And she's pretty strong-willed. And so one day I just kind of clicked, and I was like, I tell the background story in this about where it originally came from, which was me managing my own clothes buying. I wanted everything. But so one day I found myself saying to her, listen, here's the deal. If you really love it, I'll buy it for you. But I have a budget. But if you only just like it, why don't we wait until we go into another store and see if you find something that you just like? And so she was like, made sense to her. And so she did it, and it got rid of the fighting over that. And she still uses it today. So the way it applies to here is, in terms of a house, we looked at a number of different houses, and you sort of have in your mind what you want, and you can end up compromising for something you just like, because you're like, well, maybe it won't be available then, maybe we'll never find what we want. And if you can, and I always talk about how you register it in your body, because the like it or love it is kind of a math thing, not in terms of numbers or money, or although that factors in.
It's a value judgment.
You're weighing all these things,
options, yeah.
but in the end, if you pay attention, you can feel it in your body. You can feel a decision in your body, whether it feels right, whether it hits that tuning fork there or not. It's like, yeah, and so, we went around, and the house that I was showing you, I thought that was going to be it. It had a cute little chandelier in the kitchen.
The chandeliers are the things that do it for Patty. You gotta have a chandelier in every room.
Just because it's fun. It's just kind of a playful element. It's it's not about anything else but play. But I really thought that was going to be it, and I was really disappointed. And you can get into a mindset of like, I have to compromise. It's like, I really don't.
Yeah.
We'll just wait, and we'll wait till we find something we love.
Yeah.
And we looked at some other things that were close, but they weren't loves. So
there's a whole portion of this book that doesn't necessarily, I mean, probably you could apply some of the lessons from it to this experience, but I see them more as, ways to sort of navigate crisis in your life, like hard times. So talk about some of those. There's like a whole series that are very aviation themed, appropriately so.
Yes.
But yeah.
So there's a New Day, New Jet.
New Day, New Let's talk about New Day, New Jet.
Okay, so New Day, New Jet is something that in pilot training you heard all the time. So you had stand up. I don't know, was it the same in Navy flight training? You had stand up in the morning, and they would give you a scenario, and you had to stand up and talk your way through it.
It sounds like some torture that we went through. Yeah.
So it was nerve wracking. It was, you'd study, and then you're like, what if they don't call me? And then they do, and you have to go through the routine. Yeah. So pilot training was like that. Every day started the same, and they would have these emergency scenarios, and then I think they would usually have more than one. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
It's been, I don't know, 40 years, but they would have more than one. And so between the emergencies, they would say, all right, now, New Day, New Jet. And then they would give a new scenario. And I tell the story in here about using that mindset of New Day, New Jet in other areas. And the story behind that is, when I was in pilot training, it was the T-38 check ride. It was the first one, and I can't even remember what that check ride was. But you go out and you do aerobatics in the area, and then you come back in and you do a couple landings. Well, we went out, and I forget what I did. It was something, and it was probably minor, but in the whole perfectionistic, my brains, I'm like, oh, did I mess that up?
Yeah, you did something in your aerobatics. You said
I did something.
It wasn't perfect.
Yeah, I have no idea what it was anymore, but I'm still thinking about this.
You're beating yourself up.
I was beating myself up, right? Like, we all know that.
Oh yeah,
that track record.
Yeah. I screwed that up. Yep.
So I come back into the area for I guess touch and goes or full step, whatever. But in T-38, if you rolled off the perch without your gear, you failed because it was just dangerous.
You didn't get the gear down in time.
I didn't get the gear down in time. So I rolled off, and like right as I was in the turn, I don't know whether the instructor said something or I remembered, but I was like, so I failed the check ride because of that.
Yeah.
And so it was a reminder to leave the past there. Like, yes, you need to debrief. Yes, you need to recognize what you did wrong, but not to bring it into the present moment. And so think about how true that is in any walk of life, whether it's flying or whether it's raising kids or whatever you may be doing.
Yeah, don't become completely incapacitated by a mistake that you made in the past. Deal with it, accept it, learn from it, and then move on. And then you also say something about how shame over things like that doesn't serve you at some point.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
And it's hard to get out of that. But it doesn't ultimately serve you. And so one of the ways, I think one of the ways to get over shame is to acknowledge that it happened. There are other things. That's a whole huge topic. But one of the things is just to simply acknowledge, because I think a lot of shame has to do with wanting it to not have happened.
Yeah.
Right. Wanting to not have made a mistake. And you're like, I did, but it happened. Yeah.
Well, the book is full of just absolutely, I think that your life experience and the way that you have dealt with the personal trials and navigated your life, you are a mentor to people, to me personally. You're very wise. You don't dictate. And that's one of the things you talk about. And let's just touch on that before we wrap things up. This idea, we talked about this idea of a guru. Tell me about like how you see what a guru is and how you are not one.
Well, so you asked me, why is that such a big thing for you?
You have this hang up about gurus. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So that's a long story too. But it probably started with growing up in Old Order Mennonite, where Old Order Mennonite community, and was very authoritarian. And then having seen in different areas, like in business coaching through with the personal coaching, the idea that a guru gives you your answers. And that has always bugged me. I guess I'm just a contrarian. I don't know. But it's like you certainly want to get information from other people. You want to take in more perspective. So I'm not saying um, don't learn anything from anybody else. By all means, learn something from somebody else. But in everything I've always done, including the book on children, I think within you is the wisest part of you, and you want to develop that. And if you are looking for someone to give you the answers or give you all of the answers or give you your answers, then that goes undeveloped. And so one of the hacks in there is mentor yourself, right? And learning that process of how to do that. And I think of it as self-leadership. It's are you creating a curriculum for your own growth? Are you able to identify where you need to grow? Are you able to do that without shame? And then say, okay, if I were developing a curriculum for myself, what do I need to learn? What skills do I need to learn? What mindsets do I need to shift? And then how might I learn that and practice it? And
Yeah. You don't need somebody to make the decisions for you. You can learn from people. You can be guided by other people's examples and advice, but ultimately you are your own guru.
You are, and if you're, it's like being in the airplane. Probably not everybody who watches is going to be a pilot, but nobody else can fly your airplane for you.
Right.
And so it's the same thing in life. Other people can teach you, they can instruct you, they can certainly teach you things you don't know.
Yeah.
But they can't fly your life.
Exactly right.
And so that's where that comes from.
What are you hoping for this book?
I hope that these are tools that it's something in the person who reads it they recognize, and it feels like something they've always known, and that they have the form to practice it and go, oh, I understand that. I get that. I never quite thought about it that way before. Because I think the mark of wisdom, is that it's universal. So it crosses, it's not just aviation, it's life, it's parenting. It applies to everything, maybe in different ways. It might look different ways. But I also think that there's something about it that people recognize because wisdom is already within them. Yeah. And then they're just like, oh, that's the container. Oh, now I understand. Oh, I get that. Like, oh, now I can apply it. And I think that's one of the things I hope is they recognize these aren't mantras. It's not like theory. It's like, these are tools. You can put them into practice and they won't do you any harm. Yeah. They will help you. Oh, and then there's one other thing in there. I don't know if you noticed this. Oh, because it's not in here. This was my prototype book.
Yeah.
Yes. So in the final copy, what I did is I added a little page after each one of them for discussion with your anamkaras. And I explain.
Okay, this is you.
Yes. And so there's like 5 questions with each hack. And the idea is that we learn from each other. It's kind of like what
we learn from each other all the time.
We learn from each other all the time. And I have found that sometimes when somebody is asking me for something and I hear myself giving an answer, I learn something too. Right. Like it's never one way. It's not like you're teaching. It's like, oh, I didn't realize
You're
that.
achieving more clarity around something.
You're achieving more clarity. So I have a section in there where you can either use each of those at the end of the hacks, there's 5 questions, and you can either use that to think about how those hacks apply to your life, or you can gather with your anamkaras and discuss.
Tell me what an anamkara is. This is a new word to me. You sprung this on me.
Yeah. Well, we like to be surprised.
I do like surprises.
So, yeah, so this is something near and dear to my heart, and I explain it. I have a PDF that I'll make available for people too. But I explain about anamkaras and like creating your own little flying clubs and of personal growth. But an anamkara is a Celtic term for a soul friend.
Oh,
right?
Oh, now I'm gonna cry.
And so if you understand the concept of soul friends, when I said that, you know immediately who your soul friends are. They're people you're safe with. They're people who want the best for you.
Mm-hmm.
They're people who see all the facets of you. And at the end of the day, they're like, man, I love that person. Like, this person makes my life better. This person is someone I can talk to about this person. And most of all, I think this is someone I can grow with, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like they're, so yes. And so the idea is that you form a little circle of anamkaras and whoever that is for you, and that you're each on your own journeys. That's the thing. But you're journeying together. You're walking through together. You're growing.
Oh, Patty, you got me. Thank you for being one of my cherished anamkaras.
Likewise.
Is there anything else you wanted to talk about that we didn't hit on?
I guess I would just close up with leaving your neighborhood.
Brilliant. Yes, that's a lucky way to close up.
Because an obvious example of leaving your neighborhood.
Talk about the leaving your neighborhood hack.
So the leaving your neighborhood hack points to something that is has to do with life passages, and for every single person, and for young adults, there's a period of time from about 27 to 30, where the developmental imperative is that you leave home. Yeah. And it doesn't necessarily mean you have to leave your neighborhood or your state or anything, but it means mentally you have to leave home. You have to know that you can motor under your own power, you can think your own thoughts, and that you're your own person. But leaving your neighborhood, those life passages happen not just at that age, but all throughout. You have to leave your neighborhood and what's familiar. And sometimes that's a little scary. Yeah. But yeah, so
you left your neighborhood.
You left your neighborhood many times.
Yes.
And so many good things have resulted. It's scary, but doesn't mean you don't like your original neighborhood. It doesn't mean you have to abandon people or places. It just means you have to get out of your comfort zone, and leave your neighborhood, and that there's something about that is life-changing in a good way.
I'm so excited about this book. It's Captain Patty's Wisdom Hacks, 20 Tools for Clarity, Direction, and Self-Leadership. It's available for pre-order. Hopefully I get this edited and out before September 9th when it launches. And I know it's a beautiful gift that you've given the world. Your wisdom is, I'm here to vouch for it. It's very instructive. And as I've been here spending the past week with you, I've been reading these and absorbing them and kind of reflecting on what they mean to me. And it's brought me some clarity. And I appreciate it.
That is the point of it, is clarity. Because clarity changes everything.
Boom. Done. That was fun.